morning and welcome to Market Outsiders. My name is Namaan. I'm joined by my colleague and co-host Jenny Rae. It's Thursday, July 24th. We're just a few minutes before the markets open. Jenny Rae, how are you today?
Naman, today is kind of a big day. So Tuesday was my 13-year-old's birthday, but today is mine. So I'm really excited to celebrate. I'm happy to be with y'all here on the podcast this morning. One of the things that I think is the greatest of joys is having work that you love. And I haven't felt like I've had to drag myself out of bed to go to work in decades. So I'm really excited to be here this morning. And I'm excited to dive into what I think is going to be kind of a fun convo that was a listener generated request. Naman, can I bring it to you?
Let's do it. Happy birthday,
Okay.
by the way. And since it's your birthday, you get to choose what we talk about today.
Oh, was that how it goes? Okay, great. I love it. Thanks. Well, the the conversation kind of started with a listener pinging us yesterday and saying, "Hey, did you hear about the new Tesla restaurant that owned in Los Angeles? That opened in Los Angeles?" And so I actually hadn't heard about it. Maybe you had, but I thought that we just in real time today could open up a conversation about what the heck the Tesla restaurant is, what the business case is for it, if any, and also, what can be learned from an exercise like that. So I think that this is a great example of something that would make the news for different reasons than we would think about here on the podcast. So I want to have a little fun with this. It's my birthday after all. I'm in Southern California, and so I could go today if I wanted to because it's my birthday and I can do what I want to. But I don't know that that's necessarily on the cards. However, yesterday for our birthday bridge, just as a quick aside, on a previous pod, we talked about Din Tai Fung. And yesterday the family was there. So I've got a couple pictures that I will upload onto the feed today. So if anybody still hasn't visited the kind of restaurant phenomenon, you should definitely check it out. So today, in more restaurant news, we've got Tesla. So let me actually just pull up a Chrome slide them on, and I'll do kind of the searching that I would do on something like this just here in real time. So, usually, by the way, one of the searches that I do every morning when I'm preparing for the podcast is a search like this one. So, Naman, can you see that screen there? You're looking at my
Almost.
whole screen.
Hmm.
All right. Well, that's probably not what we're going for. Let me try to see if I can get it back up because it was up there before just a second ago. All right. There we go. Google Chrome Business News. How's this?
Hmm.
Right. So if y'all are in a place where you're wanting to build business acumen, one of the first things that you can do in the morning is just kind of get a sense of what you feel like you shouldn't miss out on. Right. So I think that's kind of one of the key pieces of my morning news is just what's happening. And often it will be kind of an intersection between politics, geopolitics, so international insight. It also will look into kind of key overlaps for companies. So you'll see something like United Health in the news today. And a lot of these are seeds for what we'll talk about here on the podcast. But there was a kind of an article this morning about, Elon Musk, but it wasn't about the Tesla restaurant. So when I got that request, I literally just did a quick search. You can do this using AI or not. And this was kind of the overview of the Tesla diner opening in Hollywood, California. So I'm going to click on this one. Business Insiders, usually kind of a good place. They have often stuff in front of the paywall, which is also helpful. And so we visited the first Tesla diner. It was surreal and heavy on nostalgia, and we'd go back. Sitting on first glance, would you go?
I'd check it out. It looks like they're going for like a mix of classic old school diner slash futuristic type of design. So it actually reminds me of a diner I went to in New York City years and years ago that I believe was called 2030, where like the waiters were dressed up as aliens, like serving you food. And because I guess that's what they thought 2030 was going to look like. And now that we're almost there, um, we're not quite there yet, I guess. So I would check it out is my short answer.
Hey, just on that, did you initiate that dining experience with the alien servers in New York, or was that somebody else? I gotta know. The people need to know,
Uh,
Naman.
So today it would be me initiating, but when I went, I was still pretty young, so I feel like I didn't have that kind of cachet to initiate for a group.
I love
I
that.
I
Okay.
must have been like, 9 years old.
Oh, that's awesome. You said a few years ago. I guess that's a little closer for you than on my birthday today. So yeah, so you're right. Two Business Insider reporters visited the new Tesla diner within 24 hours of its grand opening, kind of as expected, right? Kitchen is hectic, waits were long, building was interesting, and the food was good. That's a good start, right? And then also, I think this is pretty interesting. Like the Tesla diner has features for Tesla drivers. It's a worthwhile stop for curious visitors. One of the things that I don't know that they'll cover in the article, but I just want to say here is that I am a Tesla driver. And part of the reason that I bought a Tesla is the same reason that I love doing this pod with you, Naman, which is that it's kind of like an experiment, right? I love the thought experiment about a future where we have electric vehicles. And one of the most fascinating pieces of owning a Tesla for me is that I don't visit gas stations, and therefore I don't visit gas station convenience stores. So often the Teslas are, in other parking lots. I do grocery shop sometimes. I've run to the bank when my Tesla is charging. There are different use cases for where you put a Tesla and park a Tesla. But one of the things that's missing is the kind of convenience store experience, or on the East Coast and the Turnpike, the rest stop, or the kind of full suite experience. And so my first thought here wasn't like this is a kitschy thing. It was like this is a test concept to actually integrate some of the real estate that Tesla could at some point own with the network of its chargers. And in order to do that, they're going to want to have a way to monetize users in the same way that gas stations basically have, which is that they've used the power, the gas as the loss leader, and then they've sold customers that are visiting other things at other margins. Because a Tesla takes on a shorter charge, 20 minutes, on a longer charge, 45 minutes, a diner actually is a pretty good fit for something like that, rather than just like a quick jump in and a grab from McDonald's. So that was kind of one of my first thoughts, and I'm interested to kind of explore that as we go through it today, right? So first of all, it's packed
Can
by
I just give you my
Teslas.
first thought?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
sure. Mhm.
because I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think kind of vertically integrating a charger network could be in the future for Tesla. I think this has nothing to do with Tesla at all. I think this is like a proving ground for Elon's robotics. So I think what he's doing is he's saying the future of my company isn't actually electric vehicles, it's robots and robotics. And so what better way to test different kinds of robots than in a restaurant concept? Because you have like you have a kitchen that could use some of that automation or some of that robotics. You have like waiters or servers that could be robot servers. You have like runners between the kitchen and the waiters that could be robots, right? So I don't disagree that what you're saying could be the play. My instinct is it's something different, though.
So I like that. Basically, what we're talking about is the fundamental potential difference between a fixed and a variable cost business in the future for Musk, and like whether or not owning either hardware or like a network in terms of the charging network is a play for owning an entire ecosystem, or whether it's a play to sell products, right? And I think like right now, the company actually has a lot of flexibility to go a few different directions. I think I may have even said on this pod at one point, my 12-year-old, before he turned 13, we were hiking one day and he was like, Mom, like, why don't they have a Starlink phone? And I was like, I can't believe they don't have a Starlink phone. That's so interesting. I never thought about the use of a satellite network to actually disrupt an entire fixed cost business, because Tesla historically has been a variable cost business, right? They produce cars and they produce solar panels and they produce like, things that are a piece of each one making margin every single time that they're sold. What I would want to explore with that, Naman, if that's true, is like, what is the play beyond selling robots? Because that will become largely a commoditized experience going forward in the future. Like robots will be a product, and they will probably kind of, there will be proliferation of the different kind of, folks that can produce them, and the types of things that they do. What does a robotic ecosystem look like? That's my question. And so anyhow, let's see if there's any kind of
I think
clues inside here. But go
I
ahead.
think this is maybe one of the ways you start to test that
Is
and
what are
start to
the
figure that out.
opportunities
Hmm.
to kind of like lock down, or what are the network effects of an ecosystem?
Hmm.
What are the opportunities of kind of creating that kind of
Because I would think that there's actually multiple ecosystems to own. Like there's maybe like one for the automotive sector. There's one for the restaurant sector. There's one for like maybe what I'll call, direct to consumer, right? That's the one you'd have in your house. And so I don't actually think that this is like one ecosystem. This is multiple different really markets with like single point of connection.
So here are a couple of the fun features there. Let's see if we can kind of probe into the test. Which, by the way, I mean, I live in California. I don't know how long. I hope it says in here this restaurant has been in planning, but it has to have been years. Like it's not possible to get this kind of thing done in a shorter amount of time. So this represents the culmination of ideas that didn't just start a month or two ago. So the retro futuristic eatery, which officially opened just days before the company's grim earnings report on Wednesday. That's hilarious. Because you would think that that would be perfect timing. It probably was a little bit of the perfect timing, but it certainly isn't going to eclipse anything that's happening with the broader business with Tesla. But pedestrian crowd, right? Promenade for tricked out electric vehicles. I don't even know what a tricked out electric vehicle looks like, but I really want to find out. I've
What
only
means it's got a
seen
bumper sticker?
Yikes, that's wild. Then, right, diehard Tesla fans and curious onlookers stopped in for a bite to eat. Selfie with a popcorn serving humanoid robot. So, right, giant screens, servers dashed by on roller skates, and EVs and robotics were proudly on display. This for me feels like going to like Tomorrowland in Disney when I was a kid, but actually real time, right? Kind of like being somewhere that feels like a little bit kitschy and it's separate from your core experience, but it's getting closer. It's definitely getting closer every day. Um, while the Buzzy Diner was chaotic, right? The architecture was eye-catching, the atmosphere was intriguing. Um, and then here are a couple things here. What did I say? Tesla applied for permits in Santa Monica in 2018. So not 1 year, 7 effing years. That's how long it took them to build this. So retro diner at a charging station. So this is something that Musk was thinking about a lot before these kinds of ecosystems were being built about. I also think that's pretty interesting, pretty cool, exterior shot here. And then there are right V480 supercharger stalls, which means it's the largest urban charging hub in the world. So a lot of what they probably had to get the permitting for was this specifically. Also, Cybertrucks, I feel like maybe part of the tricked out crowd, polished, modified for off-roading, and when adorned with a Dogecoin themed vinyl wrap. That's what we're talking about, Naman. This is the tricking out of the future. This
That,
isn't your
that's what I
average
said. That's a
pickup
bumper
truck.
sticker.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And but this is kind of more what I expected from Tesla owners, right? Blowing bubbles out the window. Like that to me feels like classic Tesla. And then yeah, it just you can see here, right? The parking lot is basically a charger station. And so without it, it's going to be kind of tricky for you to get there unless you go on foot or by Uber, etc. But also this is kind of one of the key things. The feature is the robots. So Bumblebee, a 2022 era droid and iterations of Optimus, which is the company, is currently working to bring to market. So this is a little bit of a showcase for that, but also, like you mentioned, a literal test kitchen, right? I kind of want to look at the menu, but I don't think that's material for today. What do you think, Naman? You want to talk about the menu at all?
Yeah, I mean, this looks like your classic diner menu, right?
Yep. High margin, like easy consistency products. Cinnamon rolls are a big test for me. Cinnamon rolls and desserts, right? If somebody gives me a warm brownie and vanilla ice cream, I'm not that impressed. But if you can knock it out of the park on something like a cinnamon roll, it's a little bit like, one level up. I like that a lot.
I will say,
Um,
just looking at the prices here, that's about the cheapest thing we could find in Santa Monica.
It's so true. Yeah, no alcohol is served on site. That's a little bit surprising, honestly, because most restaurants, as you probably already know, make most of their margin off of drinks in general and alcohol specifically. And so, that's kind of an interesting piece of the feature.
Can
Um,
I just say one thing here? You mentioned
yeah,
something that I think people could have glossed over, right? Like it's a
sure.
simple menu, it's repeatable. I think that's one of the reasons you want to open this kind of concept if you're testing robotics inside the kitchen or inside a restaurant concept, because it's not like you have to put like a custom five-course meal together that's different every single day. Like chicken and waffles are chicken and waffles, a burger's a burger, a hot dog's a hot dog. Like these are simple, repeatable processes day in and day out that you just have to execute, and so that you can get better at kind of increasing efficiency, get better at increasing the throughput over time by leveraging some of the technology that Tesla already has. And so I think it is, like you said, a really optimal test kitchen if you were going to play with some of that technology in the real world to be making dishes like this as opposed to something that is a little bit more bespoke or a little bit more involved than just like a grilled cheese sandwich. So I think the diner makes sense, but like from like the vibe perspective, but I think it also makes sense just practically if you're looking to hone some of this technology to have a menu that looks like this.
I love that. I do think that's insightful as well. Honestly, looking at the menu and the price point and the whole experience, like this for my kids, my three boys, this seems like the kind of place that could be an entire event. So I probably will actually go check it out just for y'all, just for the listeners. We're here for you. Um, but yeah, right. There's a couple of kind of fun things here. They kind of talk a little bit about the food. There's this like at Ruby's Diner, which is kind of a staple in Orange County. One of the core things that you always get is one of the little like fold up cars. So it's kind of a cool classic throwback to that. So instead of having like a coloring menu like you would have today, it's a more interactive experience for kids. Everything sampled was worth a second bite. I think that's actually pretty impressive. Um, and then we kind of talk through timing, probably one of the core issues, not what you're expecting when in a full robotics environment, because you're not just trying to outsource labor, you're actually also trying to usually speed up experience
Mhm.
or push some of the experience onto consumers, where you would order on an app or you would order on an environment, you would go and pick up your food, right? You would kind of expect that there would be like a kind of lighter option for that. Still working out the kinks. I think you would expect this, but I would definitely, right, for a place emphasizing technology and robots, there's also a lot of human help, right? So I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant with robots serving anything, Naman, but I've been to one.
I
I
have.
basically have. Tell me what your experience is like, because I think that I go right now because I have kids, but I would love to know what the robot actually did.
Not much. I mean, just rolled over and brought our food to us. But it was nice because I've been to this restaurant multiple times. It's actually an Indian restaurant, which was surprising to me to begin with, because it's not where I expected to see like a robot server, but an Indian restaurant in Central Texas. And I think what they've done is they've reduced like one waiter per shift by having this robot that they just program. So like go to like table 12 with a particular meal. And so they just like load it up in the kitchen and then it just rolls out and brings that meal to table 12. And so a human takes your order, but after the human takes your order, everything else is brought to you by robot, even if like it takes a couple of trips to get you what you ordered if you have like an appetizer and then a main entree. And so that's been my experience with like a robot server. I don't mind it honestly. Um, it's obviously it's less personal, but hey, as long it's a little bit novel and as long as my food gets there in good time, I don't really care. Um, and yeah, so it wasn't a bad experience.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm skeptical about how much labor those robots actually save. I've been to a restaurant where they serve drinks, and honestly, like there's usually a human filling up the drinks and putting them on the robot, and the robots are kind of like they're not super quick. So they also are blocking foot traffic. I would hate to see restaurants that accommodated for robots instead of having actual seating that was full, because that seems to me to be like a negative trade-off. And so then you have like the human waiters waiting around to get around a robot that they had to fill. And then also when it gets to your table, if there's anything wrong, you have to call a human back over, which I think
Mhm.
is like one of the kind of unintended or unassessed pieces of the robotics experience is kind of like change management or lost challenges, right? Like yesterday in a dining experience that I had, there was a piece of hair in my food. Like you still have to have a human at this point come over to kind of address those kinds of issues. And so if somebody's actually coming to the table and plating it for you, it's a little bit of a different experience.
It was definitely augmenting what the human beings were doing. It certainly wasn't replacing them. And I think that's why the emphasis, at least that I see Musk and Tesla placing on humanoid robots, is because you need a quote unquote humanoid robot to actually start to replace some of that human input. Uh, this restaurant that I was at certainly was not there.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that this actually highlights is that it's actually possible that at Tesla, at least now, the Optimus robot is managed by a human. So you have a robot, but it literally is a feature of the restaurant that is not saving labor because it's right. So
It's
it's
actually
doing
adding labor
this.
costs.
Oh, I mean, maybe adding labor costs, it's adding cost because you have the robot
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
labor. But in testing, I think there are some. I, I don't know. I'm skeptical about how much robots can actually do in these kinds of environments.
I think it's one of
Um,
those things where, like, in the next 10 years, probably not much, but like in the next 50 years, like we might see exponential progress. I think with this kind of technology, progress is always slower than you think, and the hype train is way ahead of what's actually happening.
yeah. Um, all that I can see here is that like you're seeing the robots case. I don't know. Oh, by the way, here's the big bumper sticker. I don't know if I see it. I still see kind of the bigger opportunity here as an infrastructure play around electric vehicles. And I think Tesla has made some pretty big moves in the last few years to own the electric vehicle infrastructure inside the US. There are major network effects. I also in Orange County, Rivian is based here. So Rivian trucks, one of the downsides of Rivian trucks is basically if you're anywhere except for where a Rivian dealer is, there's essentially no infrastructure. And that infrastructure build out is, and even for Tesla, even in California, is still challenging. You can get stranded in a Tesla pretty easily driving around the state. There are major pockets of places where there's relatively little infrastructure. And right now they're pretty susceptible to other retailers accepting the chargers. And I do think that there's a business case for that, but I think that owning more of this vertical infrastructure would be super appealing over time. So,
I
um,
agree with that. Just two thoughts quickly.
yeah,
I think it's actually immaterial whether I see it as a robotics play or not. What actually matters is how Elon sees it, right? Because
agreed. Same for
if you're an
me.
investor, right, and so really, my take is that's how I think he sees it, and I think that's material insight if you are an investor in Tesla, or even if you have exposure to the S&P 500, because it's one of the seven largest holdings inside of that index. And so I think it does matter, just kind of like how he sees this concept playing out. And then second thought is just I think if they're going to move towards this kind of vertical infrastructure type of play, I don't know if a diner concept makes sense in the long term because I think you have the potential of diluting your brand, right? Like you position Tesla as a premium brand for like a upper middle class to kind of wealthy cohort of customers. Um, I don't know if like a $9 burger at a diner is the experience that actually reinforces that brand positioning. And so I think it's an interesting test case now, but it's not necessarily what I would roll out nationwide if that ends up being the play. I think like an elevated kind of coffee house or like another kind of concept would actually play better with the brand. So I'll be interested to see if this spreads, if they end up tweaking what the experience looks like. Because when I see hot dogs and burgers at a diner, I don't think Tesla. And so I understand why it's happening here, but I would be surprised if this ends up being the play nationwide.
You see a little bit of the expansion plans. In fact, Naman, you may have a chance to go to a Starbase spaceport in Texas. And if he starts the planning now, it could be done by the end of the year. That's one novelty of Texas versus California. So there definitely is, there's some changes in different places that you might see. I think it's interesting that in a place like Santa Monica, like you said, a diner is kind of countercultural there, but they did have avocado toast on the menu, so let's not discount that. All right, right. But I think that I think that this article doesn't dive into a lot of the business case, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to just pull something up and highlight it because I wanted y'all to see what we see, which is that like we would love to go here. Seems kind of funky and fun, has retro vibes. There are a lot of interest points here, but like our radar is kind of on when we're thinking about the bigger picture for something like this because we want to not just go to a restaurant, but train business acumen as we go in. And so I think that this is probably a part of a bigger picture for Tesla in many different categories. And that's what makes interacting with a brand like Tesla really exciting. But truly, if you pay attention, almost every brand has a story underneath the surface like this one.
Well, Jenny Ray, thanks for bringing this to my attention today, and thanks for to our listener for sending this to us yesterday. Um, if you end up going to the Tesla diner, then tell us how your experience was like. Send us pictures, and if you've got ideas for future episodes, things that you'd like us to unpack, please send them our way. You can reach out to us at podcast@managementconsulted.com or just leave a comment underneath the episode on Spotify. If you like what you heard today, you can leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we will see you next time on Market Outsiders.
Bye, everyone.